Welcome to another edition of Maverick University. I'm your host, David Hallberg. Joining me today is Pastor Jonn Morrow, pastor of New Hope Baptist Church in Kennan, Wisconsin. Thank you so much for joining us and being here with us today.
Good to be here.
We talked before on the topic of depression and some things that you personally went through, and I encourage folks to go back and listen to that episode. It'll be a big blessing to them. I know it was a help and blessing to me. But I also want to talk a little bit about your personal ministry experience in starting a church in the town of Kennan, Wisconsin. And so I just kind of want to give you the floor here for a minute and just give you the microphone and just let you tell your story about church planning, because I think anyone who's ever started a church probably has a few stories to tell. Yeah. The ups, the downs, the realities of it, the burden for it, the need for it. And then we can maybe dive into some of the principles and things that you talk about. Yeah.
Maybe as we go along, you'll think of things to ask me about. But when after Bible college, I went down to Ocean Springs, Mississippi as an assistant pastor. Yep. And when I went there, I told the pastor, I said, God has called me to preach, and I know I'm supposed to pastor, but I want to go somewhere and learn under somebody. Mm-hmm. And so I figured, I didn't tell him, I didn't know, but I'm thinking in my mind maybe 5 years, something like that. So I was there and just involved in everything. But after 2 years is when the Lord really began working in my heart I'm from the north. I was down in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, the Bible Belt.
Fish out of water, I bet.
Yeah, Baptist churches everywhere, and just being burdened for the north where it's not like that. And so through a series of events, I ended up telling the pastor I feel like I'm supposed to resign. Mm-hmm. And I was a school principal, and this was like maybe in April, and I said I'll finish out till the end of the school year, and then I've got to go. And it was no problem. I love the pastor. We have a great relationship today. There was no issues, just the Lord. So what had happened is when I started feeling this burden, I would talk to my dad about it on the phone, back and forth, and he said, I said, feeling like you want to start a church up north. When I was a kid, I had a man who had taught me and another boy in our Christian school, a church planner, had kind of took us under his wing and did some classes with us and encouraged us about that. And so I just kind of had that in me. Mm-hmm. And so my dad said, well, there's, we talked about, well, maybe we'd get a house with a big living room, start there, and we'd talking about different things. And then one day he said, well, there's this old school building that's going up for auction. And so we began to talk about it, and they were going to have a certain date. You had to put in a bid for it, you know. So when he told me that, this kind of gets to a long story, but my wife, her mom and dad had gotten divorced when she was little, and their mom remarried, and that man died in a helicopter crash in the military. It was a practice mission. Oh, wow. Well, when that happened, there was a settlement, and her and her brother had some funds that were put aside for them when they turned 18. Mm-hmm. So when I met my wife in Bible college, I didn't know anything about this, and even until we got married, really, I didn't know about it. Well, so then we got married, then we realized, hey, we've got some funds here, and somebody had it invested in the stock market, so we thought, well, that's good. Well, then when my dad told me about this building, then I said something. I said, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's why God has given that for us to get a start. So I told him about it, and so we said, well, we'll put a bid on the building just to see. Yeah. And you had to have $500 to put in a bid. I didn't have it. I'm assistant pastor, just kind of, somehow we scraped the money together, put the bid in, prayed, of course, praying. And then he called me back the next week and said, well, we got a building. Wow. And I couldn't believe that, It's like, wow, this is the Lord. We could have never, we put in a bid for $20,000 and got, this 14,000 foot school building, 2 stories and older, but on 3 acres and so forth. And so now it's like, okay, now I need to tell pastor, I wasn't doing this behind his back, but I didn't know what was happening. I was just praying about it and putting feelers out, and then I told, I knew I needed to tell the pastor, and and we had a church planner actually come through on a Wednesday night and presented, and I thought, man, I gotta go now. So I went to Pastor and I told him, and I showed him the pictures of the building and so forth, and he wasn't happy because he didn't want me to leave, but
Sure.
he said, well, this looks like the Lord's doing, So, anyways, the church sent us out, and we just came up to northern Wisconsin, and we had a building, which is rare. We bought a trailer house to live in. I paid off my car, so we wouldn't have a car payment. We bought the building, and then there was enough for 20% down on this mobile home. That was exactly what we needed.
Yeah.
Those three things, the money was gone, and but there we were. So driving from Mississippi all the way up to northern Wisconsin, having never seen the building, never seen this house I'm going to live in. How excited we were to see that. And so we got there. Once I knew I was supposed to do this, I wrote a handful of letters to different churches I knew and asked for a little bit of support. I didn't go on deputation. I didn't even think of it because I look back, I probably should have, but I just, God said, go, here's the building, just go.
The writing was on the wall.
Yeah. So
who starts a church and have a building to
Right.
boot? You have a building before you have a church.
Yes, but we had the promise of nothing. We're going to this little town, but God said go, so we're going by faith. So got there. I got a job driving a school bus, subbing. That helped me to get to know the kids and different roads and all that kind of stuff. Started inviting kids to a gym night, and then started having services, knocking on doors, seeing people saved. And we've been there 20 years now, and it's just been the Lord, has blessed us. That's kind of a quick story about how we got there. But
Sure. Kennan, Wisconsin, that's northern Wisconsin. Is that just an area where you knew there were no churches, and that's why you were looking for a building in that area? Or
Well, I was thinking coming north and, starting. Really, God given us the building is what chose the town.
Got it. Okay.
So, and
you had a region you wanted to go to.
right,
Yeah.
right, the north. And God knew exactly that place because within the first year, there was, I think, at least 20 men that I led to the Lord that passed away within that year. There was a lot of cancer, a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Priest, when we first got there, led a man to the Lord, and at his funeral there was like 500 people between the two.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking about a town of 100, and
Yeah.
then it's like God was just giving immediate publicity. But I often think back, well, if we hadn't obeyed the Lord and gone, all those men that for different reasons passed away, the one man that got saved, that first man, he would take me around to all his buddies, say, here's the pastor, now you listen to what he,
Wow.
he can talk to you.
Yeah.
He had his oxygen tank, and we'd go, and one by one we'd see him get saved, end up preaching the funeral. So the gospel got out quickly.
Yeah.
The Lord had a plan. The Lord knew what he was doing. And then after being there a year, we started the Christian school, which is, you don't do that. Don't start a Christian school when you're 1 year old. But we had a family that we had reached who was doing some homeschooling for their kids, and they just were struggling. And I figured eventually I'm going to inherit this, so So we started with 3 students.
Were your kids homeschool age as well?
They weren't even, my first daughter was 6 months, or I think maybe 8 months old when we moved there.
Okay. Yeah.
So they weren't even around yet.
Yeah.
So we started with just 3 kids and had a little school, and each year it would grow. And so that's kind of how, and then the kids came along as we've been there, so, yeah.
Well, I mean, talking about just the type of town that Kennan is, it's a very small town. You said 100 people in that town. The most of the people that you're reaching or that attend church, do they come from Kennan itself or even from around the area?
Yeah, well, our attendance is between 80 and 90 right now. So,
Okay.
but it's not all. There are several from town, but there's other little towns. It's a rural area. You got to drive to Walmart. You got to drive. When we first went there, it was an hour to the closest Walmart.
Oh, wow.
Is where we get our groceries. Now there's a couple that are like a half an hour away.
Okay.
But everybody drives, so we do have a pretty big drive-in crowd from different places that people have heard about our church or we've reached, and but so there's a good group from town that come, but a lot of extended outreach that we do.
So obviously, smaller church, smaller town, more on the plate of the pastor. You've got to be wearing more hats
Sure.
than you can't really delegate as much to other people. But can you talk a little bit about delegation? Are there men in the church, people that you're able to
Yep.
get some
Sure.
help with on things?
Yeah, initially, you clean the building, mowed the grass, preached, all those things. And then I remember, and I actually kind of enjoyed mowing the grass because we had a lot of grass to cut, and I would pray and think about my sermons and stuff. But eventually we had people come more, and I handed that off to another man. He takes care of all the grounds, and that was good. And cleaning issues, as God has given us people, we've seen kids get saved, go off to Bible college, and now come back and they're teaching in our school. When I drove the bus, I would always pray in the morning, Lord, help me to win some of these kids to the Lord. And the Lord ended up allowing us to lead a brother and sister to the Lord that were twins. And they both got saved. Their family got saved. They went off to Bible college, came back. Now the one girl, she's really involved in our Christian school teaching. Now they have kids, a bunch of kids. And so, the Lord has brought help because you can't do it alone. My kids have been born and raised and a big help too, so yeah.
Can you talk about the role of your family in your church, your wife's role in helping you with this church starting effort?
Sure.
What was her role? What was helpful? What was some things?
Well, it's always been family. We've served the Lord together. When we started the school, she was right in there helping with that, and really our kids have been raised. We've been with the kids through the school because we're always there, the school ministry. So she's always helped in the Christian school, and of course all other things that a pastor's wife would do. But yeah, it's always been a family. We serve the Lord together. The kids don't regret it. They're happy. God has been good to us. We've never looked at the ministry as a burden. And I think you could ask my kids. They love it. They don't. It's not easy. There's troubles and problems that come, but I thank the Lord that they all have had a good experience with it.
Has there ever been, obviously ups and downs in the ministry, but any opposition from the community about your ministry, and maybe even overcoming some of that?
I don't know. The community has been. We've always tried to have a good. We're always doing something. Like we have a big vacation Bible school, and we do all stuff for the kids all the time and outreach. So we have a good rapport with the community. Of course, in any church, you've had folks that something happens, they get upset and they leave or whatever. We've had some of that, but 20 years, you just have to stick it out. You talked about this morning in chapel. The hireling fleeth, when trouble comes, and you just got to stay. I think sometimes pastors or problems come and they just get tired of it and they go on, and I had an older pastor introduced me from the area there, 45 minutes away, and he would introduce me, and I remember him saying, "This is Pastor Morrow," and he'd introduce me to someone. He's come here to stay. And when he said that, I remember feeling that in my heart. From the Lord. A couple different times like that. He's telling me. And so, God could move me, but I've always had the mindset, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to pastor this church. I have 4 goals. I want to raise my family for the Lord, pastor this church, have a Christian school, and we have a camp property now. And I thought, if I can accomplish those 4 things, then I'll feel like I've been able to do something for the Lord with God's help. So that's the idea of staying is important. I think that's how you build you build generations, you build a work, And I know God has pastors for times, and people move around. I'm not saying that's wrong.
Sure.
But for me, it's about raising a generation for the Lord.
You're not looking for excuses to leave.
Right. And like God could, that'd be fine. But I just feel that in my heart that God has planted us there and trying to raise a generation for the Lord. And we're seeing that. We're seeing people we save, their kids are saved, and it's exciting.
And I wanted to go off on that topic a little bit. You talked about that one gal, her and her brother saved in your church. She went off to Bible college. She's working in your Christian school now. Yeah. What are some of the things that you think are helpful, effective in reaching people and making it a generational thing? Often we'll reach people and they'll maybe exist for a little while and they'll go off a wayside or something like that. But what helps? What do you think?
Well, coming in, I guess it's a little unconventional, but coming in, starting, of course, I preached Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night, but Wednesday nights I was involved. I did the King's Kids. I had help with my father, and he would take the adults and do a Bible study. Okay. But I would help with the King Kids. And so the pastor was very much involved in building that King's Kids. And then when that got to be pretty good size, we were starting to see kids 14, 15. I didn't want to lose them. So we had somebody else kind of come in and take the King Kids, and I took the teenagers because I didn't want it from between King's kids and getting to the church. I don't want to lose them.
There's a gap.
Yeah. So there's a connection with the pastor, and that's kind of how we did it. I think, and we've had a couple kids here that are even in Bible college that got saved at our King's kids. The parents got saved and then grew up in the church. The school helps. Mm-hmm. I think of the Christian school as like a discipleship wing of the church, really, because you got them every day teaching them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those things that you can interact with, they know their pastor, you're in their house, you're very much involved. Have the school ministry, the youth. We do a lot with the youth, summer camps and stuff. We had to have our own. And
you're the youth pastor, in a sense.
So we just pour our lives into them and pray for God to do something, and He has.
Well, it's so easy for anybody to, especially as a pastor, to be focused on your area and just kind of detach yourself from all the ministries going on in your church, but you've personally involved yourself into a lot of those.
Yeah, and as time's gone along, I've been able to get more help, but I still want to stay, in tune with the young people.
Touch it every once in a while.
Yeah, the young people, because that's the future of the church. They're gonna, So.
You ever spend a service in the nursery?
Not yet. Not yet. I'm thankful I haven't had to.
Well, I appreciate you coming in. Before we finish up here, just the burden of starting a church. Can you talk to maybe a young man who maybe feels that maybe this is what God wants me to do?
Yeah.
Obviously, fear, apprehension, don't know what's going to happen. Can you talk to someone who's maybe feeling led by that?
Well, I remember feeling, what am I going to do with my life, and being challenged. I knew I wanted to serve God with my life. But I remember thinking one time, what greater thing could you do for the Lord than start a church? Mm-hmm. I mean, where souls are going to be saved into longevity. And so if any young man is thinking about it, that's a wonderful thing to start a church. You're fulfilling the Great Commission. You're reaching souls. If God puts that on your heart, it won't be easy. But if God tells you to do it, you can do it. Mm-hmm. Just be faithful, have faith in God. I remember that church planner that talked to us. He told me he worked as a tool and die maker. He made a lot of money, but God was changing his heart into church planning. And he told me this. He said, I made up my mind that I was going to trust in the living God to meet my needs. And that just really stuck out to me, because our God is a living God. Yep. And if He calls us to do something, we can do it. He's alive. He will help us. And I've seen that to be true. If God wants you, and I challenge that we need churches. America is becoming the mission field of just the way things are going.
Absolutely.
And I challenge young men to pray about it and start churches. It's a wonderful thing to do.
Amen. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Make sure that you check out our other episodes on our YouTube channel. Make sure that you like this video and that you share it with somebody who will be benefited by it. And you also subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Also, you may want to check out the audio-only platforms for the podcast as well. And that'll be a blessing to you as well. Thank you so much. God bless you.